Thank you, Kimberly. That was great. We're going to move on to fair vote discussion and two individuals, Meredith Sumpter, who is the president and CEO of Fair Vote, and Cynthia Richie Terrell, founder and executive director of Represent Women. She's an outspoken advocate for institutional reforms to advance women's representation and leadership in the United States. The more extensive bios for these individuals are on the website and were sent to you in the invitation. These two experts on ranked choice voting are going to work together to go over a set of slides that they have to explain ranked choice voting. Many people believe that ranked choice voting offers an opportunity that really enhances women's possibilities for gaining elective office. And so that's why we're interested in it today. So if we can move to Meredith Sumpter, who like me is from Alaska and has some experience with ranked choice voting there, and Cynthia Richie Terrell to talk about how ranked choice voting works, that would be terrific.
Great. Thank you so much, Jen. It's great to see you. Great to be here. I know Cynthia and I are both excited about the prospect to share about these evidence-based reforms with you and to be part of this discussion. I just first want to thank the professor on her first presentation. We absolutely need a full reinstatement of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. We need at this time more participation in our democracy. So that right to vote is important, but I think where Cynthia and I come into this with election reforms is we all must have the equal right to vote, but we also need to make sure that every vote counts. And as we're getting our presentation up, I think the Democratic drift that American people are feeling is the realization that for most Americans, their vote may not count. Certainly as you get to sort of national or congressional level elections, we have 435 seats in the House, and you just have, a handful of those seats are actually competitive. 14% of primary voters, these could be the most fervent voters that we have in the country, are electing 92% of our Congress. So there's a real democratic disconnect here. And ranked choice voting is an evidence-based reform here in the United States that helps to connect elected leaders to the needs of the majority of their voters. So if we can just go to the next slide. Thank you so much. All right. So ranked choice voting, this is one of our country's fastest growing pro-voter reforms. So in 2016, this reform was really in just 10 cities. In 9 years, it has spread to 50 states, counties, and cities, reaching 17 million Americans across the nation. It's used in the most populous cities in 7 states. So you have two states, Alaska and Maine, that use it statewide. And then you have a rash of cities that have been adopting this reform and showing how it works. Essentially, ranked choice voting, it gives you as a voter more choice and more say in who represents you. You can choose your top choice, and then you have the option of ranking your backup choices. What makes this reform unique is that it requires a candidate to earn at least majority support, or at least 50% of voter support to win. So you actually have to earn a majority of support from your voters. And as a result, you're not just representing your narrow partisan base. In order to win that 50% threshold, as we'll see in just a few minutes, you have to appeal to voters who may not vote for you first or even second. And that's a really healthy thing in terms of improving and strengthening representation, as well as decreasing the political polarization that has really held up the functioning of our democracy. You can go to the next slide. All right, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. I think everyone here on the call understands that we are really in a moment of democratic crisis. It really comes down to our elections are no longer competitive. This is due to gerrymandering, due to other measures that have been undertaken to decrease the competition in our elections. Voters feel that they have limited choices. We have two dominant political parties, and yet we have a majority of American people who are not affiliating with either of the major parties. We also, with our current election system, because we have just single choices, most of our elections are won by non-majority winners. So these are candidates that are elected with a low plurality of voter support. That means that the majority of their electorate did not vote for them, and therefore they're not beholden to them. As a result, we have an increase in political polarization, as well as toxic campaigns. The result of all this, our elected leaders, they might come into office with all good intentions, but in order to win and keep their seat of power, they find themselves beholden to a narrow partisan base, not to the majority of their voters. That results in more partisan gridlock, and nothing is getting done. So we go to the next slide. Thank you so much. All right, so with ranked choice voting, again, voters have the option to rank candidates in order of their preference. And what we'll do is if we can actually just go to the next slide. I think I've already covered this top. Okay, so here is a real ranked choice voting ballot. This is one for Salt Lake City. I realized as we were putting this presentation together, Cynthia, we need to find a ballot that has female names on it. I think all of these tend to be gentlemen. But as you can see, I'm a mother of four. I've got 4 kids that are doing Scantrons in elementary and middle school. Oh, I think we just lost a presentation. It'll come back up.
So sorry.
No
Goodness.
worries.
Where did that go? Yikes. Excuse me. I guess keep talking and I don't know what's going on.
No worries. So with that ranked choice voting ballot, it's very simple. It's as simple as the Scantrons that your children or grandchildren could be filling out in their public schools. You would vote for your first choice, and then you have the option of ranking your backup choices. So let's say I really like Nigel and the platform that he's got. I'm going to rank him second. Dennis would be I'm going to rank him first. Dennis would be my second choice. Maybe Alejandro would be my third. Billy would be my fourth. And I really don't like what Daniel has to share to the American people. So I'm not going to rank him at all. And that is my choice to do so. But this is a look at what these ballots are and how simple it is for a voter to understand what their options are. If we can go to the next slide. All right, so I wanted to share with you how ranked choice voting works. So again, the rule here is that to win these elections, you have to get a majority of voter support to win. Sometimes within the first round, there is a majority winner, and therefore that person is declared the winner. But if not, then what happens is you can see here with round 1, Andy gets 40% of the vote, Berta is 30%, Carla has 20%, and Darius has 10%. So what happens is the last place candidate, Darius, is dropped from the race. If we go to the next slide. And if you voted for Darius first, and he's no longer in the race, your vote would automatically count towards your second choice. So here you can see that Darius's ballot, those who voted for him first, their second choices come into play. So Andy picked up 2% and Berta picked up 8%. But still, we haven't reached that 50% threshold. So if you go to the next slide, so Carla is dropped, and then the voters who voted for Carla first, their next choice comes into play. And with that, you can see that Andy gets over that 50% threshold, and he is there declared the winner. So if we can go to okay, so just to recap, how does requiring a majority winner change politics for the better? So you can see, I hope from this exercise, that you as a voter, you have more choices, you have more say in who represents you. If your first choice can't get elected, you have the option of your vote counting for your next choice. This creates incentives for broader engagement with voters. It also creates incentives for more positive and civil campaigns. So just think about it. If I'm asking for your vote And, you know, Jan, I go to you and I ask for your vote and you say, I'm absolutely not voting for you. I'm voting for Cynthia, Richie, Terrell. She's my first choice. And I can say, well, Jan, I understand. I think Cynthia is terrific. I like what she has to say about public transportation and a clean environment. I want to hear from you on other issues that are important to you, and I want to be your second choice. So let me engage you on that. And it just totally changes from the toxic tear down campaigns of the present to a more collaborative, civil, positive politics of the future, where we, Cynthia and I, as candidates in these elections, we're focused on you, the voter, what matters most to you, where we have commonality on the issues that matter to our voters, and how we can get things done for them. There is an evidence base of, we have over 800 RCV elections and counting here in the United States. And so we have a lot of data that both documents how voters engage with this election reform, as well as what the results are. And what we see is that because of this electoral incentive to appeal to a broad base of voters and to make sure that you're serving a majority of your voters, we also have elected leaders, once they're in office, there is more of a tendency to legislate and govern across the aisle to get things done for their voters. Lastly, I think, and I would say for this group and for us, most importantly, the strengthened representation for women and for communities of color is really something to behold. Cynthia's going to talk a little bit more about that in the follow-on slide. We can go to the next slide.
Well,
Okay, great. So I just want to give you a visual again of where ranked choice voting is used. It's used in Alaska and Maine statewide. It's used in about 48 other sort of cities and counties, and again, reaching 17 million Americans across the nation and counting. And we can take it, I think, to the next slide. And I'll pass over to Cynthia to share with you a little bit more about the evidence base of what these reforms can do.
great. Thank you so much, Meredith. And thanks to everybody who's on this call. Really excited to hear your questions and maybe your experiences with using ranked choice voting if you're lucky enough to be in one of the cities where it's been in use. So I think as Meredith teed up, there have been a lot of ranked choice voting elections in the last 25 years in the United States. So we have a lot of data. And the data is meaningful because millions of voters have experienced a ranked choice voting election. So what we can say with authority is that voters like to use ranked choice voting, and they use their rankings effectively. 96% of voters in New York City say that ranked choice voting is simple, which I think is a super important point to make. 88% in Arlington, Virginia say the same, 94% in Santa Fe, and 68% use multiple rankings, particularly higher in competitive races, which is just fabulous to see confirmation of what some of the early trends seem to be. In addition, ranked choice voting, partly for all the reasons that Meredith laid out, really changes what kind of power voters have to choose candidates of choice. And over the last decade, women have won 52% of municipal ranked choice voting races, which is about twice the norm. In New York City, Minneapolis, St. Paul's, Salt Lake City have the most diverse city councils in history. And I think one of those, in fact, there are a couple city councils that use ranked choice voting in the country. I think Las Cruces and St. Paul that are 100% women. We could get into a theoretical conversation as to whether that seems like a good way forward, but I would say we could give it a century or so and see if governing works out better in those cities. And then I think importantly, particularly in light of the first presenter, voters of color tend to use more rankings. And we see that in New York City and Bay Area cities, et cetera, et cetera. So, as I said, women leaders hold about 52% of seats in jurisdictions with ranked choice voting. And we've seen some great examples of city councils using it. Of course, there are statewide uses as well that I would argue not only elect more women to office, but elect women who really represent a broad array of partisan views. In Alaska, we saw in the previous cycle, Kathy Giesel, who's pictured there on the left, Senate Majority Leader, is a Republican who got elected and really loves ranked choice voting. Mary Peltola is there in the center, and then of course Lisa Murkowski. And I would argue they're a good balance of partisanship and ideological belief and age of women in Alaska, and I would argue have done a good job representing Alaska voters. And then I'll also add, and we can talk more about New York City. We were doing a little bit of intel yesterday because I've been trying to remember this point. And New York City, the city council is important for a number of reasons, not just because it's the city council in the largest city in the country, but that city alone, New York City, is larger than the least populated 9 states put together. So it matters. It's a big institution, and women hold 61% of seats on the New York City Council since ranked choice voting was adopted. And I'll add that New York City also had public financing, which I think is important in terms of level setting. It also had term limits, which created open seats, but it was the introduction of ranked choice voting that enabled more women to run, more endorsing organizations to endorse multiple candidates, more voters, as Meredith described, were able to rank multiple women candidates on their ballots without creating split votes among those women candidates, and then more women were able to win as a result. And I'll add that 80% of those 61% women on the council are women of color under the age of 40, meaning that we're really seeing ranked choice voting as a tool to shift who has power and whose voices are represented in city government, which is something that I care a fair amount about. So getting back to what the data tells us, I think it's important to remember that RCV elects winners with broad support, as Meredith suggested and explained. 78% of voters rank the winner in their top 3 choices, which is really quite a contrast to how a lot of elections are working out, and a lot of elected officials do not represent anywhere near that amount, and in multi candidate primaries, a candidate can represent just 20 or 21% of the vote if there are a lot of other candidates running. Voter engagement and voter turnout is higher in RCV elections. We've seen this in some really remarkable examples. New York City is one of those where turnout in the last 2 elections, I think, was the highest since 1988 in the city. Then RCV also improves the tone of campaigns. Again, getting back to what Meredith said, if a number of candidates are running and they know they need support from their opponent's supporters, they're much more likely to stay issue focused and stay positive and find common ground. I think that's one of the common threads that we see among all the different RCV elections. And then just less mudslinging, again, because if I'm running, I want my opponent's supporters to rank me 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, depending on how many rankings are available. So I have an incentive to stay positive and stay focused on the issues. So one exciting additional thing that we wanted to touch on, and perhaps we could talk a little bit about, is the fact that it's possible to use ranked choice voting in a multi-seat district, which creates a more proportional impact. So this system has all the benefits of ranked choice voting, but also has some additional benefits, and I'll just list them here and we can talk about them if there's interest in the questions. It really reduces the impact of gerrymandering because the district line itself is no longer the determining factor in terms of what party gets elected, but the voters have the power to elect a candidate of choice in a multi-seat district with a ranked choice voting ballot. In this system, each American has multiple representatives instead of just one, if we're thinking of it in terms of the reforms that are being introduced in Congress, such as the Fair Representation Act. And these districts that are drawn, again, because they elect more than one person and they're elected with a ranked choice voting ballot, it really will end that sense of like safe districts and the fact that, oh, the Republicans are going to win all those seats, the Democrats are going to win all those seats, we have fewer than 40 competitive seats. That reality would be greatly reduced, and there'd be more competition, which we know has better outcomes for voters and also drives up turnout, which is, I think, something we all value. And then I think the additional interesting thing about a multi-seat district, I'm sitting in one right now in suburban Maryland. I have three state delegates who represent me, and they have an incentive, those delegates, to collaborate for how to represent me well. And that means they share skills and expertise and perspectives. And I think we'd see that on a large scale in terms of congressional representation as well. And again, there'd be the benefit for those, let's say, House members, if we're talking about a district in Maryland, to work together on behalf of their constituents. And there wouldn't be any incentive for them to be working at cross purposes. There'd be an incentive for them to find common ground to figure out solutions to the problems we're facing and the challenges we're facing, which I think is something that we all think needs to be happening more. Well, another topic which I think is really important in light of the first presentation and the general erosion of the Federal Voting Rights Act is that proportional ranked choice voting is also a terrific addition to state voting rights acts. Some of you may live in states that have a state voting rights act, and it's I think, becoming an essential tool to make sure that voting rights are protected and extended to people at the state level if the federal requirements are going to be weakened. So wrapping up these slides on the proportional ranked choice voting, one of the reasons that we think that it's a particularly good fit for the United States is we happen to elect more representatives than any other country. We have about 520,000 elected offices in this country. Most of them are nonpartisan, and most of them are single winner, actually. But for those that are multi-winner, we think that proportional ranked choice voting is the best fit for our American political culture. And I think, importantly, it would go a long way toward affording a voice and power and representation for communities that are marginalized for generations. For example, Republicans who live in Manhattan or Democrats who live in Oklahoma have very little chance to get elected. And in a proportional ranked choice voting system, that same math applies in many respects, and votes are cast for candidates, and candidates win based on the proportion of votes they're able to get. So a good case study is Cambridge, Massachusetts, which has used proportional ranked choice voting since 1941. 95% of voters see one of their top three candidates elected. 94% of voters get to rank multiple candidates. Neighborhood representation can arise naturally based on affinities and issues that are important without having to draw a permanent district. And then proportional ranked choice voting allows elected bodies to evolve along with the population. So I think that is the end. I will now officially stop sharing my screen. And I think all three of the presenters on the call would be happy to take questions. I will say, on the topic of both ranked choice voting and proportional ranked choice voting, one reason that I think that we can be encouraged is there just is a lot of evidence around the globe as well that these systems are working and working well. Countries like Australia and Ireland use ranked choice voting in one way or another. And I'll add that the Senate that in Australia that uses proportional ranked choice voting has 57% women elected. So I'll leave you there on that hopeful note.
57%. Wow. Thank you
Shoo-wee.
so much.
Imagine.
Such good news. We need more good news. Thank you, Cynthia and Meredith. And for those of you who have been watching, if you are interested in pursuing ranked choice voting in your district, your state, please go to Fair Vote. They have a website, and I think they can help guide you through the ways to promote ranked choice voting and proportional ranked choice voting. Proportional rather. And I think women and people of minority communities would be well served by ranked choice voting, and especially proportional ranked choice voting. We don't have any questions in the chat. Cynthia has just put in her email if you want to follow up on that. We do have actually one more speaker to round out today's program, and that is Joan Porte, the League of Women Voters president in Virginia. She is a very dedicated person to promoting voting and representation. Excuse me. She initiated an investigation into Governor Youngkin's 2023 purging of 3,400 eligible voters and pushed for restoration. So yay, Joan. Congratulations on that victory. She's also outspoken about Virginia's outdated law governing the restoration of voting rights for citizens who've completed their sentences for nonviolent felonies. As we all know, there is an election coming up soon in Virginia, and Joan is the go-to person for all of the information going on, all of the things going on regarding voting in Virginia. Joan, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I do want to follow my predecessors here by saying that Dr. Adams' presentation was amazing. It's one of the best presentations I've ever seen, quite frankly, on the loss of the Voting Rights Act and on the SAVE Act. And I will testify, I'm from Arlington, and if you know Arlington, you know that North Arlington is whiter and wealthier, and South Arlington is not quite as wealthy and much more diverse. And if you do voter registration in North Arlington and somebody says, well, I don't have a driver's license because I just moved here, or, you know, I don't have a car because it's North Arlington and there's, you know, transportation. And I'll say, do you have a passport? Oh, sure. Yeah, of course, everybody has a passport, you know. Okay, well, you could bring that. If you ask the same question in South Arlington, chances are, unless they are, quite frankly, white and have been here a long time, they'll say, no, I can't afford a passport. You know, to get a passport's upwards of $170. That is, you know, okay to some people, but to some people, that's a lot of money, particularly now. And so what she was saying about the SAVE Act and the requirement for people to have passports is 100% correct. And one of the big reasons that we are fighting vehemently against that. So I wanted to say that because I thought her presentation was excellent. So today, of course, is Vote Early Day. So it's perfect that you're here. If you're in Virginia, obviously, we want you to go vote now. There's no reason to vote late in Virginia. We have the longest of early voting of any state in the union. We have a 45-day early voting in Virginia. There are people that want to keep cutting that down, and we keep fighting that every year. And so there is no reason to not get to the polls in Virginia. The last day to register on a regular ballot and vote on a regular ballot was October 24th, but we have same-day voter registration in Virginia. So if you know someone who says, oh, I missed it, I can't vote in the November 4th election, yes, you can. You go to any early polling site, or on November 4th, election day, you go to your regular polling place, which you can find at vote411.org that I have below. You can file to vote, register to vote, I should say, and then vote on a provisional ballot. And what that means is they will look and say, okay, no, this person is not registered anywhere else. No, this person has not already voted, you know, absentee and is just saying that they're not yet registered to vote. If you meet those criteria, then the vote is counted. So there's no reason not to vote in Virginia. And same day voter registration has been a wonderful thing. It is very good for college students because college students tend to do things a little bit late. They tend to be more transient. They tend to, wait till the last minute. We were all college students once. We know what that's like. They've got other things going on. And so to do same day voter registration is very, very easy in Virginia. We are telling people we have one big caution, particularly if you live in Southern Virginia. If your mail comes through North Carolina or Tennessee, which pretty much below Richmond, there's a lot of that. We're telling people do not put your absentee ballot in the mail. We are having great problems in Southern Virginia with that because those sites, there's one in Nashville, there's one in Charlotte, I believe, North Carolina. They are screwed up. They're not processing it properly. So you either find a drop box, which you can find on our website or find at vote411.org. Use a drop box, go in and drop it off at an early voting site. You don't have to wait in line, just drop it off. Or go into the post office and have them postmark it and get some kind of a receipt. But we're really not encouraging anybody below Richmond to do that because there's a lot of problems with that. So the last day to early vote is November 1st, which is Saturday. And then the polls open 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. on November 4th. So another thing that's very, very important this year is the election protection hotline. We have not, thankfully, heard yet of ICE or ICE pretenders intimidating people at the polls. We were very fearful of that, to turn away, the immigrant vote. But if anyone has even a question, so if you go in and they say, you're not registered to vote, and you know darn well you're registered to vote. Obviously, in Virginia, you could do same-day voter registration, but call the hotline, record it. We had a situation that one of my members was doing voter registration at a college, and several students came up to her and said, I registered at the DMV, pardon me, but I didn't get anything. Well, unfortunately, there have always been traditional problems registering to vote at the DMV. So we immediately called in, this is where it is, this is the college, this is the problem, because this is staffed by attorneys 24/7. They watch this, they create a ticket. There's several languages people can call. You can call and or text. So we have these hotline cards out there. Any problem, if someone is harassing you, if someone, says you're not registered to vote and doesn't offer you a same-day voter registration option, anybody can call this and or if you get there on election day and they've run out of ballots, which has happened, report any problems, because then we can contact the registrar to do this. So this is very, very important these days. Now, what are we doing to protect the vote? Well, Jan mentioned we had a couple of problems. 2 years ago, we learned that 3,400 people were purged from the rolls. We were able to get those people. When I say we, I also mean the lawyers that we worked with, Campaign Legal Center, the Lawyers Committee, Fair Vote lawyers, were able to get them reinstated. We are still litigating a case because last year we found out that 7,000 people were purged. What is happening is the state of Virginia is running people through the DMV list. Well, the DMV list is very, very unreliable, right? Because I could go in and say I'm not yet a citizen, but I want to get my license, which is totally okay, right? You need a license. And it says, do you want to register to vote? Are you a citizen? And if you click no, you're not a citizen, it will kick you out of the voter registration thing. But say I got my license 4 years ago And in the interim, I've gotten I'm now a citizen by using the DMV material where I said 4 years ago I wasn't a citizen. They're saying, well, this person's not a citizen. Boom. And they're throwing them out. The DMV material is not accurate to use. So we are still in litigation over that purge case of the 7,000. We made it through the federal district court. We made it through the appellate court last year. And then the Supreme Court said, well, yeah, this is a violation of the National Voter Registration because it was 90 days, within 90 days of a federal election. But, Virginia has same-day voter registration, so these people can just re-register. And they went against us. However, we are now filing the same case on a discrimination case, and the judge so far has allowed it to continue. So we are still fighting that case. We have just filed a case with the Department of Homeland Security because they have taken, and this is very tricky because Virginia law requires, which is something we want to change in 2026, requires that we upload our information to something called the SAVE system, not to be confused with the SAVE Act. It's two different animals, just has the same name. And I don't remember what SAVE stands for. It's Secured, Advanced, something, something. And that's great, except the SAVE system has been kind of, shall we say, messed up by DOJ. And a lot of that information is now on an unsecure site. So there's this, first of all, we've got Virginia information that's not, this is not just Virginia, this is nationwide. The information that DOJ set up is not a secured site. And again, they're running it through Social Security and the DMV, none of which are indicative because, again, if you're not a citizen, you can't get Social Security. But if you then reapply and become a citizen, they're using the old information. So there's a lot of problems with that. This case we have just filed. In fact, our lawyers are in court today with another case on this. So this has just been filed. This is something that will have long-term, will go a while because that's how lawsuits go, if you're familiar with that. And also, we don't know how far this will go, but we are also going to pursue legislation in the 2026 General Assembly to not require this to happen. To say things have changed and Virginia cannot upload this information to this unsecure site. So we will go there. There's also a possible case with the exchange. So when someone signs up for the medical exchange, aka Obamacare, right, in Virginia, well, anywhere, you're supposed to give them the option to register to vote. The lawyers at the ACLU discovered that is not happening in Virginia. So they have filed a potential case. We did a demand letter. It's not a case yet. We understand that the Attorney General's office is working with us to correct this. So this may not go to litigation, but we need to make this available because it's required by law that when you apply on the exchange system, that you get the opportunity to register to vote. So that is another case that we are doing. And speaking about legislation, we are going to be working on the constitutional amendment. There are 3 constitutional amendments coming up in Virginia next year. They were already passed in 2025. One is marriage equality. The other one is reproductive rights, to ensure that in the Virginia Constitution, Virginia is the last southern state where a woman can control her body. And so we want to enshrine that in our Constitution. And the other one is the constitutional amendment for the right to vote, because we have many good things in Virginia, but we have a horrible system for people to get their rights back when they have completed a term in jail for felony conviction. If you have been convicted on a misdemeanor, you are allowed to vote, even if you're in jail. But felony convictions is another thing. And there's also a very interesting case that the ACLU is pursuing. We are not involved in that, but it is basically that Virginia is violating the law that they signed when they were allowed back into the Union after the Civil War. Because at the time, the only felonies that said you could remove voting rights for were, there was like 6 of them: rape, murder, nothing about drugs, nothing about all the other reasons why Virginia is depriving people of their vote. So this case is moving forward, and it's going to be very, very interesting. But we are trying to enshrine in the Constitution, again, the minute you get out of jail, you get your rights back. Because Virginia is the only state that leaves it in the hands of the governor. The governor can set whatever rules they want. They can do whatever they want in terms of, you get your rights back, you don't, you do, you don't. And there's no recourse. And the Governor McDonnell, who was a Republican, was the first governor who made it easier. It was a 55-page form these people had to fill out. He said that's ridiculous. He reduced it to like a page and a half. And then, of course, Governor McAuliffe and Governor Northam, made it very easy for people to get their rights back. This governor has added all kinds of requirements that essentially are a poll tax, that made it harder. He suddenly is saying, if I don't give you your rights back, you have to wait a whole year to reapply for your rights. But he can do this under Virginia law. It is completely, whatever the governor wants to do, they can do. So we want to, again, enshrine this in the Constitution, that you served your time, you get your rights back. End of story. No governor problems. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that we are doing Unite and Rise. Unite and Rise 8.5 is based on the theory that I'm sure you've heard about, that if you get 3.5% of the population involved in a nonviolent movement to bring around civic change, then it does work. And the National League figured out there's like 250 million eligible voters. 3.5% is that 8.5 million people. So we have several playbooks. We're now in our 3rd playbook of what people can do to be a part of Unite and Rise. And that's our QR code there if anyone is interested in joining that movement. So that is an overview of what we are doing in the Great Commonwealth of Virginia. And again, I'll be happy to answer any questions along with my other speakers. Thank you.
Well, I don't see any questions in the chat. Joan, your presentation was very thorough. All eyes are going to be on Virginia on Tuesday. And all I can say is the League of Women Voters are just really the best guardians for our vote in this country, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. And my home state of New Jersey. We're the only
your
two
home
states
state of New
that
Jersey.
we have the only 2 states that have off-year elections.
And the vote in New Jersey should not forget. Thank you very much. And to Cynthia and Meredith, they've put their email addresses in the chat. Encourage folks to think about advocating for ranked choice voting in their districts or their communities. And you can find out all the information you need to have from fairvote.org or contacting either Meredith or Cynthia. In the meantime, thanks to everybody. This was a great series of representations.
Jan,
Very timely, very important.
Jan,
Yes, honey.
we have Cobby Hoffman and Karen Humphrey in the question queue.
The fair voting. And so what I asked was something that had been, several people have brought up to me, which was, if you only choose to vote for your first choice with the ranked choice elections, several people had suggested to me that that improves that one candidate's odds. And Cynthia answered, the voting only for your favorite candidate does not help elect your favorite candidate, because it's still a system where your vote only counts once, and your vote for a second or third backup will never hurt your first choice. Thanks.
And
Thank you, Copy. Is that clear to everyone on the call? Essentially, right now with the single choice election, you only get one choice. You pick your top pick. And if your top pick is not competitive in that election, you're out of luck. You have no other say in who represents you. So but as an American who votes, you're never going to be forced to vote for people that you do not want. So, it might be, Cobby, that you just want to vote for one person and you don't want to rank any backup choices. That's totally your say. That's totally your right. But let's say if your top choice, again, isn't competitive, you don't have a second chance to be able to have a say in who represents you. You're out of luck. So actually with ranked choice voting, your top choice, you're ranking your top choice number one, you're never going to be penalized. And your top choice is never going to be penalized if you decide to rank other candidates. It's only if your top choice is out of the race that your second choice, your second preference comes into play. It's one person, one vote. Your vote is only cast once. But this way, it just allows for a more fulsome expression of voter will and preferences as you have them, right? So remember that Salt Lake City all-male ballot, which I was a little upset about because we need more women on that ballot. I didn't want to vote for that last candidate, for Daniel. I didn't like what he had to offer, so I chose not to rank him fifth. That was my choice and my right. But that would never, again, like it wouldn't impact my top choice or my ranked preferences as well. I hope that's clear, Cobby. And thank you for the question.
we have Karen Humphrey. Karen, what was your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm with National Women's Political Caucus, and we've looked at this over the years because of its impact on women. In California, my city, Sacramento, is going to probably have it on the ballot next year to consider using it in city elections. My question is, in terms of the research and the data, whether there has been any research on the impact on governance after a ranked choice election, and I would think that Cambridge would be a good place to find that. But it's all these theoretical benefits. It'd be interesting to know if there's some data evidence that the theoretical benefits of ranked choice voting. And by the way, I'm very interested in it, and I'll be very interested to see the New York results next week. But do those really materialize? Do you end up having less polarization on a council? Do you have people working together better? What is the effect on governance overall? And are you aware of any studies on that?
Yes, but let's get Cynthia to talk about
Yeah,
this.
I'll jump in and give
Thank
two
you.
examples, and then Meredith can expand on whatever I say or correct it as needed. But two great examples, I think, are the Alaska legislature. It has been championed as the most effective governing legislature right now in the country because they are able to work across the aisle and find common ground. And their champions like Kathy Giesel, who's a Republican majority leader, and Democrats who are working together. And I think there are some good examples of studies of that and news articles of that. And then my own organization, Represent Women, was interested in the same question, which I think is an excellent question. So we looked at policy outcomes that emanated from the city of New York, from the city council. That's a link. I'll look for it on my website and share it here to measure in 5 areas what were the outcomes, the legislative outcomes of having those women who were more broadly representative of different socioeconomic statuses, et cetera, across the city. And we found that there was a discernible legislative impact as well. So Meredith may want to expand on this or say something else entirely, but I think what we're looking for both is the process outcome, like how does it incentivize legislators to behave differently with one another, just like it incentivizes candidates to behave differently. But then also, is there better policy emanating from the legislative body that better reflects the multifaceted perspective of communities? And we see evidence that both those things are true.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, beautifully put. I would just add that when you change who gets elected and who they have to who they get to work with to represent their voters, the governance impacts become very real. So just, I'm wonderful that you're in Sacramento. These reforms have been in use in the Bay Area for several years, and we've seen representation change quite dramatically for, let's say, elected leaders of color. Before ranked choice voting, that was 39%. It's now 65% of elected leaders in those jurisdictions that use ranked choice voting. And Cynthia had shared earlier, just double the number of women in municipal leadership positions where ranked choice voting is in play. I was born, I love Jan. Alaskans, you can take the girl out of Alaska, but you can't quite take Alaska out of the girl. Just this summer, we have a Republican governor, Mike Dunleavy, in Alaska, who was elected with a ranked choice voting, elected in that system. He had over 50% of the vote, so he didn't have to go to an instant runoff with other rounds. But he's been making some very unpopular decisions, and he wanted to veto about $51 million worth of public education funding that within that state legislature, you had a majority of Alaskan Republicans caucus with Democrats and independents to overturn his veto. And they did that because it was in the interests of the majority of their voters, and it gave them the freedom to lead and legislate and govern in the interest of their voters and not be beholden to those narrow partisan interests. I think this is nothing theoretical about that. But very happy to engage further, and really excited to be sharing these reforms and this work with you. And a huge shout out to the League of Women Voters. They're a big partner for us on these reforms across the country. And we really appreciate the League's leadership spearheading these reforms in places like Maine and Oregon, California, and
Sacramento.
Virginia as
Yeah.
well, Joan. So great to have you on.
They're leading the effort in Sacramento. Well, and I believe that putting more women on elected bodies changes the governance outcome too. So, but I'm glad to know the data. I'll take a look at it. Thank you very much.
And that pretty much wraps up our program for today, but thank you so much to all of our speakers. This has really been fascinating, and I hope we can do some follow-up with some of our chapter people on promoting ranked choice voting in their areas. So thanks everybody for hanging on and listening to these really important ideas about how we can protect and access to voting and how we can strengthen our voting rights.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Meredith and Joan, and to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Great. Thank you. Take care.